The second assessment for image design and production asked us to select a band and develop and produce a vinyl record cover for one of their albums. I've selected the self-titled album by Betty Reyes. To begin the design process, I decided to have a listen to the album start to finish and mind map all the ideas, thoughts and feelings I associate with them and their music. As can be seen here, a lot of this has to do with friendship and camaraderie, living in the moment, and the identity of the band members themselves, being from Redland Bay and 2 of the members being Aboriginal. Based on this mind map, I then developed 12 thumbnail sketches based around the initial associations. A lot of them relate back to the idea of mateship, home, and are quite summary and upbeat. Preceding this, I then began the research stage, looking into the history of the band and the making of the album. They're described as 4 slap-happy larrikins from Redland Bay slogging through the work week to play live on the weekend. They're tradies, working-class rockers, and as such their target audience is the working class and young Australians. The band themselves notes that their album is about a sense of place, not just where you are, but who you're with. It's about the ups and downs of growing up and growing up as friends, and it's about checking in on your mates. At its core, it's authentic and is heavily centered around mateship and camaraderie, delivered through heartfelt lyrics, huge hooks, and mosh-worthy riffs. The visual inspiration for the current album cover is inspired by Dookie Bag Green Day. It's hand-drawn and very Where's Wally-esque. Try and find all the Betty Reyes Easter eggs on the cover. It's fun and chaotic and relates back to the core themes of the album. For my own visual inspirations, I looked at other debut albums by Australian independent artists. Been Doing It for a Bit by Ruby Fields, Baronia by Hockey Dad, Don't Let Go by Dear Seattle, and King Stingray's self-titled album. What I'm drawn to most about these are how personal they are to the artists and how they feel almost self-made by the artists themselves. They feel almost scrapbook-like, capturing a moment in time. This is what I hope to emulate with my record cover design. This is a mock-up of one of my iterations. It'll consist of a combination of photographed and hand-drawn elements with a focus on the band. The second mock-up is a collage of different places in Redland Bay, once again highlighting the identity of the band members and how heavily a sense of place relates to that. And the last mock-up is again a combination of photographed and hand-drawn elements. It consists of a photo of Redland Bay, a hand-drawn Polaroid and other hand-drawn designs. After I was happy with my initial ideas, I set off on a drive around Redland Bay to take photos of the landscape, scenery and specific places such as Redland Bay Pub, the Jetty and Selloutridge Park. These were all taken on my phone and I would adjust the exposure as I was taking the photos. Thankfully, it was a beautiful sunny day and I went a bit earlier in the morning so the lighting would be softer. I did, however, find it to still be quite harsh and so touched up the photos after in Lightroom. I also collected a variety of leaves and flowers that I intended to scan and add into my iterations. Here's a few that I collected. For the album title/band logo, I found a couple of newspapers lying around the house and so cut out random letters to really emulate the scrapbook and homely feel of the cover. I even hand drew a couple of letters to add some variety. These letters were scanned along with a couple of paper clips I found. Here's the final result, and here I'm scanning the leaves and flowers that I found. For my first iteration, I used several of the images I had taken and in Photoshop cut out specific elements of each and composited them together in a collage. As a lot of the images were visually quite similar, I played around with proportions to make the design a little more abstract. In this design, I also used some of the leaves and flowers I scanned. I then used the scanned letters and repositioned them as desired, playing with sizing. Finally, I added a slight color filter, adjusted the exposure, and added grain. I'm really happy with the outcome, and this is the design I've chosen for the final. For the second iteration, I created a little illustration of a van and little cartoon versions of the band members in an attempt to emulate the core theme of mateship and the fun, carefree vibes of the album. This was scanned and then composited over one of the images I had taken, and I also created a road illustration in Photoshop. I then used the same logo as the first iteration, just repositioning the letters. Overall, I don't love this design. as cartoon illustrations aren't my forte, but I do love the idea as I feel like it captures the fun-loving camaraderie of the band and the album. The last iteration is the simplest, but I still think it's quite effective. For this, I used one of the photos I took, added the same logo I used on the previous iterations, and added some hand-drawn elements using the paint feature in Photoshop. I experimented with different colours and shapes, but eventually settled on the plain green. I then added a colour filter, adjusted the exposure, and added some grain. For the final design, I chose my first iteration. To create the back cover for it, I handwrote the song names on a lined piece of paper, tore the edges, and scanned it. This was then composited onto one of the photos I had taken. The torn edges had gotten lost when I scanned the paper, so I tried to recreate the effect with a drop shadow. I also added one of the paper clips I had scanned previously to further add to the collage feel of the cover. I then added the same color filter and grain to finish it off. For the vinyl label, I kept it quite simple by using the logo already on the cover, just adjusting the position and shape of the letters, and using a blue background. Lastly, for the album poster, I wanted to keep it visually similar to the album cover, so I used the same images and techniques, just adjusting it to fit the different size. Overall, I'm quite happy with the final design of the record cover and poster, as I feel like it encaptures the core themes of friendship, place, and belonging that is very central to Betty Ray's and their debut album, while remaining authentic to the fun-loving and carefree nature of the band.